Today's guest grew up in foster care. He learned early on what it felt like not to have a permanent place to belong. Today, he leads a team of almost over 250 agents, has closed over $1 billion in real estate, wrote his own book, and coaches privately. But what I really want to talk about today is the distance between those two things and what it actually took to cross it. Garth, welcome to Built to Belong. I am excited to dive into the conversation today.
Thank you. I'm excited to dive a little bit deeper than what most people get to in my story, which is just the fun and the large, big headliners. And I think usually if we delve deeper, maybe some people are going to identify with some of my story and some of what it took and maybe find themselves in that and see that there is a way out. So I'm hoping that this can be helpful.
Yeah. So take me back. You grew up in foster care.
Yeah.
I want to start there because, like you said, I think that is one of the most important places of your story that most people skip over. What did that experience actually teach you about survival, trust, and showing up for yourself?
Okay, I'm gonna take it a little deep.
Yeah.
And so when I was first adopted, well, let's go before that. When I was first put into care, and Child Protective Services took me away from the situation that I was in. I had a motorcycle gang VP for a birth dad and a meth head mother. I was not fed. I was not taken care of, and they took me away. So they then gave me to multiple different foster families where I either had to deal with physical abuse in every way that you can imagine, to dealing with hunger, to dealing with understanding that I was not the person that they actually cared about, to knowing that I was just the paycheck, to knowing that no one actually cared or would support me. And the first turnaround that I ever had, and once you read 7 Degrees, you'll know this part, but was when I got adopted, but it wasn't even when I got adopted because I still didn't trust the people that adopted me. The moment came when I was doing something that I wasn't supposed to. I was playing on a chair in like a place where there was like work going on in this place or whatever. And I fell and I had a nail go through my head.
What?
And I didn't know. Yeah, I've got a bald spot right here because a nail went through it. And I didn't know, but I knew it was painful. And all my mom saw was me falling off of a chair. And so she goes, "Good in the corner, go to timeout." So I go over there and I'm like, whatever. And then I'm sitting there and I put the hand behind my head and I look at it and it's just blood. And in that moment, I don't know why or what, but I just screamed out, "Mom," for the first time. They came running. They didn't yell at me. They didn't scream. They didn't say I was in trouble. They took care of me. We went to the hospital, got it all fixed. At the end, they gave me a stuffed animal. His name is Snowball. And forever, that was the first time I was proved wrong. And I love being proved wrong when it's something like that. Even though that was the first thing that led me to start trusting or believing in humans, I still had a lot of anger issues. I still didn't belong. And that's why, thank God that they're at least really intelligent and empathetic people. They put me in sports to get rid of my aggression. Something that I don't talk about a lot is why I compete so hard. And sometimes people will ask me, "What did you do in sports?" And I said, "Yeah, I was a nationally ranked runner. I freaking had an offer to play for the MLS that I didn't take." Like I say all these things, which is cool, but why did I do all of that? And if I'm honest, that's all rooted with the fact that I never truly felt like, unless I was earning my way, that I hadn't earned anybody's acceptance. And that if I wasn't perfect or the best, that I wouldn't ever belong.
So your value was tied to your productivity very closely. So would you say that those are the first people that showed you what it felt like to belong?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But before that, there was absolutely nothing. It was just hell.
Yeah. What point did you decide that your beginning wasn't going to be your ending? Like, was there a specific moment or turning point where, because a lot of people that go through what you go through allow external circumstance for allow themselves to be victims of their circumstance. Like, what point of there did you come across where you knew that wasn't going to dictate where you were going to go?
I'd say there was kind of like two distinct different points. There was the initial one that crept up on me. That was just because I focused all of my attention on sports. And I finally realized, hey, I had a shot at actually doing something with it and I was pretty good at it. And I just focused on that. And I was like, of course I can go do this. I'm great at it. And that was soccer initially. And then there became another point in which I realized that I was stupid. I came to my dad. This was 7th grade. Came to him and I said, hey, I'm stupid. It wasn't like some, "Oh, I'm so stupid." No, it was like a self-actualization moment. And I went to him and I'm like, I'm stupid, but that's okay because I'm great at sports.
Yeah.
But let me explain what I was doing before that. Every morning I was training. I'd go to school, finish school, train, then practice. Maybe I'd train more before I go to bed. Every single day. I had a strict diet, everything. So he said, you're not stupid. What makes you think that? And I said, well, I don't get good grades in school. What do you mean?
Yeah.
And he said, what makes you think you'd be good at sports? I'm like, what do you mean? I am good at sports. He's like, why do you think that is? Which I love that he gave me this question-based framework. And I said, I don't know, because I'm just good at it. Like, he's like, no, it's because you train and you work harder than everybody else. He's like, so let's do an experiment. And I said, okay. He said, what's your best subject that isn't PE? And I'm like, damn. Okay. I was like, well, I'm getting a B- in math. Like, I'm not that bad at math. He goes, okay, we're going to take an hour a day and I'm going to privately tutor you in math. So every single day connected to my training was an hour of one-on-one tutelage with my dad in math. By the time 7th grade was over, I was doing calculus, 4th best in the state in math competitions, and I had a 4.0 the rest of my life.
Wow.
That same year is when I decided to get into real estate. I didn't know I was going to get into it immediately because I still had the hopes to play professionally and I thought there was more money connected to it. And ultimately, I thought I would play professional soccer and then get into real estate. I later just went straight into the real estate game. But that same year is when I decided to do real estate as well. So,
Yeah. So the version of you that started real estate, what did he understand that the foster care version of you didn't?
you know, I think so. When I started, there was a lot of things connected to me even being able to start. I had to tell a lot of people no. A lot of people wanted me to go to all these Ivy League schools. They were offering me full rides. And I turned them all down. And the administration was like, why are you doing this? You're being stupid for this. Right. And I sat there and I said, well, I don't think so. I think that I understand numbers well. And I know that now. Right. And I was like, and I think I can get people to trust me, and I think people will listen to me, and I think I can guide them, and I like houses, and I like sales. And if all of those things are true, I should be able to do at least decent in real estate. Of course, backtrack, I was living in an apartment where I slept on the couch and paying for our bills since I was 14. I was coming from the perspective of a Google search that told me that I would maybe make $50,000 a year, and I was like, oh my God, I could be rich. Make it 50 grand? That's crazy. Mind you, this is Washington State, right? Washington State, 50 grand. And I was like, I am going to be loaded if I try really hard. I think people will listen to me because I try to be a good person. And in the end, people just want somebody that's in their corner, that's competent. And I will force myself to be competent because, my mind was always still predicated on productivity being correlative to my self-worth.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think there's irony with your story because our industry is literally built around homes, right? And for someone who had grown up without a permanent one, what does that mean to you? Like, what does it mean to you on a level that most clients never fully understand?
Well, for me, it was always a sense of not being settled. And then when I got adopted, that was fine. But we still went through a period where we didn't have a house. And so I have underwent that for over a week. It was a week and a half, 2 weeks without one. And I can tell you when you're in the parking lot of a rest stop and you're living there with red Solo cups that you're eating off-branded Cheerios out of, it really hits you that having permanence and having security changes everything about your life. And when I have the ability to help people get that, it changes everything in their life. And I think a lot of people think about buying houses and they think about the equity and they think about the growth potential and they think about all of that, which is good. And I usually do focus on that and I break it down to them. But housing security itself is something that doesn't get enough exposure because they think, well, what happens if I can't make a payment? Well, if you own the house, they're not going to kick you out the next day or the next week. If you're renting it, they can and they will. If you own it, you might have 6 more months before they'll even foreclose on you while you're not making payments, and you can save up and then you can go rent something. So the housing security of that is something I think is missed way too often. And it's something that I really resonate with and I don't really ever talk about.
Has it ever came up with a client in a way that changed the transaction for you?
Well, I've ended up working with clients specifically because of my history. I've ran into people that, oh, we're interviewing 10 agents and da 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 da. But when I go through that, a lot of it's like, what's your commissions? What are you giving? Whatever. And sometimes it's just having a conversation with them about life. And you want to work with people that understand what you're going through. I've been fortunate enough to help people that are currently fostering children that are good people, and you can tell, or that underwent foster care themselves, and we're trying to figure it out. And that level of connection and understanding that the likelihood that the people in those situations ever unfortunately get to even be in normal society, and I know that seems hyperbolic, but the statistics show that that's the case. 1 out of 20 will ever become middle class.
Wow.
And it's the literacy rates are absolutely terrible. The likelihood of home ownership of somebody who is ever in foster care is abysmal. It's probably the lowest statistic that we've ever seen. It's more likely that they end up dead or homeless or on drugs.
Wow.
And so, one of the things that I want to do when I grow big enough is to be able to affect actual change in that system. And it's something that I've cared about for a very long time.
I see that heart that you pour in and the selflessness in your leadership. One, I think your vulnerability is what makes you so relatable. Like, that is part of what I think is one of the reasons why you grew Park Place over 250 agents, and I know merging to EXP was a big decision for you.
Mm-hmm.
Most people who build at that scale typically disappear behind the machine. Like, you chose to stay in front of it. You chose to stay present. You chose continue to pour into people. Where does that come from?
Selfishness. It's maybe not the answer you were thinking for.
No,
completely
different.
Here's why. Here's why I'm going to say that. For me, the talking about it, being real with people, being authentic with people, and being toe-to-toe with people is cathartic for me. It helps me cope with my otherwise and pre-existing and still existing conditions. And to me, if I was to fade into the background and not be around, I couldn't help people because I'm not there. So why am I doing any of it in the first place? Because I didn't get into it to try to make lots of money. Because I have to look at myself as, why did I get into it when I started? I wanted housing security. I didn't want to be homeless, and I wanted to help people. That's the real truth. A lot of people that get into real estate, they get into it when they're 35, 45, and they got into it because they realized they could make money in it. They wanted to have a side hustle. They wanted to, they saw the TV shows or whatever. That wasn't me. I wanted to help people, and I knew I was good with people, and maybe I could sell stuff because maybe they would trust me. That was basically it. And so I look at that and I say, would what I'm doing now make little Garth proud? And if I'm going to die at any point, will I feel like I was and am doing the right things? Not just for me, but for the world. And I can't always say that. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. Absolutely, I do. But I try to make it so that most of the things that I'm doing are going to make both of those versions of me proud.
Do you ever have like imposter syndrome when you do all this? Like, have you ever had a moment where you've almost quit? Things have like hit the wall. You're like back against the wall. You don't know what to do. Like, have you ever had moments like that?
Which time?
Yeah.
And I think it would be, I think any agent that's been in this business for a long enough time, even a short enough time, would be lying if they said that they didn't. And I think the first time I thought about quitting was my first 60 days, when I was sleeping in the office and I still didn't have a bed and I had to make something close before I would be homeless again because I didn't have enough saved up I had to get a closing. And of course I ended up making it happen, but it was terrible and it was scary. And then came another time when I'm trying to expand and I'm looking at it and I'm saying this landscape isn't competitive enough for me, so I need to find something new to compete with because again, I'm competitive. That's not going to go away from me. And so I'm like, if I can't be number one where I'm at, Like I can't. And so if I'm number one and I'm 21, almost 22 years old, that's ridiculous. I shouldn't be number one in anything. And so I left that company and I went to another one, and that was scary, right? Like, because what if it's worse than where I am? Changing companies is scary, especially when I just bought my first house. I'd had it for like 6 months. I just like started building savings and I was going pretty well. And I was like, well, but if I'm not going to do it now, I probably won't. And I'm not going to be the person that stays and is stagnant and only sells $5 million in real estate a year. Because at this point I was competitive. And I was like, if everybody in my office is doing 5 and I'm doing 9 and I'm 21, I shouldn't be here. I should be doing something else. And so I then aligned with a company where there were people doing hundreds of millions a year. And I said, okay, great. Now I'm where I could be. And I almost quit when I was doing my first development because it was so like I did a deal and it's like $21 million, which is great to say on paper. But that deal took 7 months. It took me running crazy analysis of things that I had no business and no understanding doing. It took me going into rooms and asking questions and forcing stuff to happen that I was not initially involved in. And at this time I was like 23 years old. And I was way out of my depth across all of it. And there were times where I would literally be so stressed out. I would be like silent crying. Like I'd be like in a corner, just silent crying. And I know like I laugh at it now, but I'm not joking. I would literally be like just sitting in a chair and I would just sit there staring at a wall. And I'd like, like you're not trying to cry, but it's coming. And you're just... And you can't, like, I almost quit then too.
Yeah.
But then I closed it and that was great. And then I got another big community and it kept coming. And then all of a sudden it was, oh no, my company's going to get sold. Of course, that ended up selling to the big black and white company. And then after that, I was like, where do I go? I'm going to get absorbed again. I don't want to get absorbed to something I don't understand. And then I started my company and that was scary because I was like, I'm going to pay all this money to maybe start this thing that nobody's going to maybe like. Maybe everybody hates me, right? I don't know. I'm still young. I'm unproven as an owner. That's a totally different business. So let's start this new business and see how it goes. And then unfortunately it went well at first, but then all these people had all these questions and things I'd never done. And then I had to deal with like hundreds of different files and random things all at the same time while still trying to sell homes. It was freaking terrible. And then all the while trying to grow it, because if it doesn't grow, it stagnates and dies. So I'm trying to grow it the whole time, trying to build staff, which I'd never done, trying to coordinate what the staff should do, which I'd never done. Just all of those things. And add on top of that, getting sued. Like, I'm like, now I'm getting sued, and it was frivolous, so then we get it thrown out, but it didn't stop me from paying $90,000 and spending countless days fretting about it and being extremely anxious and having because we let that agent go because they were breaking a lot of rules, let's say that, and we found that out, and that wasn't part of the scope of what the lawsuit was, but we let them go. Then they sued us for wrongful gain because we withheld some of their commission, like is inside of our contract, so we upheld our contract. He sues us, and I'm like, what? And I was like, I just got rid of all of this, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And so then it came to a point where I was like, I don't want to go through another year of this. So I'm going to offer him some money, right? Like, this is kind of what happened. Like, the dispute was like over 40 grand, something like that. And I was like, fine, just offer him 15 to go away. Mental sanity, not dealing with it, whatever. Attorney comes back. They say, no, we want all of it. And I said, okay. And this is the directive I gave to the attorney. Because the attorney's response to ours was, you guys shouldn't have done that. It was wrong of you. So I told Ryan, that is the attorney, I said, here's what I want you to tell his representative. I am willing to pay $1 million to not pay him anything. Let's go to war.
Wow.
Because if we're going to make this a moral conversation, let's make it one. You're the one that broke several different licensing and regulatory rules all at the same time and got me sued. And I didn't withhold all of the money. I got charged $90,000 to represent you, get it thrown out, and everything else, also that you could pay me a little bit more than what your cap was going to be anyways, and then you want all of that back because I am the one that's in the wrong. I didn't even charge for like my time or our services in dealing with it or all of the other stuff. And I was like, absolutely not. So of course, what happened? I ended up paying another like $90,000 to not pay him anything because I believe that morality is extremely important, not just in this business, but in life. And the second somebody questions that I am the person that's in the moral wrong, I will absolutely and unequivocally bash them down on it.
I think that's what makes you dangerous. Because what I'm hearing amongst all of this, like the biggest takeaway and something that I've learned from you personally offline is no matter what season of life that you're in, it's only temporary defeat until you accept it as permanent failure. Like you are dangerous because you recognize that you may not be the strongest or the smartest person, but you are 100% the most definitive, the most certain, and the most determined person that you will continue to get up. Like failure after failure, lesson after lesson, you have continued to get up. Like I said this on a podcast the other day with Leo, that like if you've got a guy outside a bar who's drunk and swinging on people, and even if he gets beat up every night, I guarantee you within the next week, no one's gonna mess with him. Not because he's strong, but because they know that no matter how many times he gets beat up, he will get back up. And so I feel like that's your mentality as someone who came from the underdog and someone who's experienced the lack of belonging, found your belonging, know what becomes possible, and now fight on that morale standpoint of like, listen, I'll go to war if I need to because I am so definitive in my values. I'm so certain in my purpose, and I'm rooted in like what. And I think you are so acutely self-aware. And so you're right. Some of the answers you've given me weren't ones that I anticipated, but you are acutely self-aware and very emotionally intelligent. And especially for like people in our industry and for someone at your age, like it's not easy to come across, but I also feel part of you just grew up a lot earlier than most kids did your age.
Unfortunately.
And it brings me, because I really want to talk about 7 Degrees, your book. And I want to talk like what it is behind it. Like, is it an autobiography? Is it Garth figuring out the degrees between survival and success? Like, tell me more about this book launch.
Yeah. So it's everything. It's my life difficulties. It's foster care to starting the business to making the merger to getting shot, is overcoming all of the steps of my adversity. And the headliner to that is that the difference between where we want to be and being completely different directions can be as small as 7 degrees. That is a small, simple twist, a teeny readjustment. And in my life, that ultimately was the difference between being here and being dead. Wow. So when I look at that, it finally gave me the right ending to my book. I was wondering what everything was, how it was all connected, why it was all connected. And then when I've been trying to work through all the mental things about, almost dying, I have gone through a lot mentally. And I sat down and I utilized the fun thing of AI. And I determined exactly the difference between sitting here and sitting here. And that's the difference. And I said, that's such an insignificant difference. It's so, like, on the face of it, there is no difference. That was the difference of when I was training. What was the difference that made me a better soccer player than other people? It's because I would work harder at it, and that compounded. What was the difference between the math? It's because I changed the angle a little bit. I started studying. Like, what was the difference in real estate? I started doing the fall activity challenge. I made that much different changes. But the real lesson that comes from it is what happens if you make 7 degrees the other way?
Yeah.
How negative can things go?
Yes. Yeah. And it just made me think about what happened. Was it a year ago? What happened? July 20th, so almost coming up on a year. We didn't talk about that much. Can you give like just a brief gist of like what happened? Because I also feel like the 7 degrees, like you were positionally like in this position that like if you were shifted anywhere else, like that could have been substantially different outcome of what had happened. And I think it's great because like you were just talking about, people talk about the highlighted reel. They seeing you successful. Like we're beyond the foster care, the trials and tribulations. You're in the season of expansion and this happened to you. So yeah, tell me a little bit more about that.
On the face of it, I used it as brand building. I used it as a way to expand the message further. God, it's so bad. I'm so entrenched. But under the surface, it was mentally just so hard. And what happened was this, for everybody listening. We're in a car, and when we're driving, so I'm driving from Memphis to Nashville. We're going into Nashville because, Post Malone was opening his new restaurant. We wanted to try it out. Anyway, so we're going, and when we go anywhere that's like a couple hours away, I don't drive. I know, I'm the guy. I should drive. But I also work, and I don't have 2 hours to not be on my phone. So I'm working because I'm also going to be safe. So I'm sitting here working. We're going down the freeway, and a car just starts swerving through traffic. Almost hits us. She moves over. Guy almost hits us again. But because of the way she moves over, it's almost whatever. And then he comes back, pulls over to the side, comes up, peels off to an exit. I'm like, what? And he rolls the window down, pulls out a rifle, starts shooting. So I see rifle come out, and just natural instinct that this isn't because I'm a good guy. Maybe some people would say it is, but I don't know. It was just natural instinct. So it comes out, and I just do this, right? She's that way. Shooter's that way. So I'm like this.
Covering, you're protecting. Yeah, right.
Like this. And then it ends up that the round goes through the side of the seat, which would go here, and then would have gone and through. But because I was here, all it did was go across my back and into the windshield. So had I not done that movement, no, I would not be here. And the sad part is, I don't know if it's sad or what, but, we go through the ER, the whole thing. And that night, we still go to the restaurant because it was in the calendar. It was in the schedule. In fact, I posted online from the ambulance, still not knowing how it was going to go.
I remember seeing that.
That
was insane.
I didn't know how it was all going to shake out. All I know is there's lots of blood, lots of pain, all sorts of stuff. And I'm getting into an ambulance, and I'm like, hey, guys, I got shot. I don't know what's going to go on. And then they take me to the ER or whatever, and they do all these tests. They do and I'm putting a deal together. I'm talking to a seller in the ambulance ride. I put a deal together. When they finally unconnected me to everything. They're like, you're going to be okay. We're going to give you some stuff. You're fine. And I was like, okay, great. And I'm literally standing there, and I'm putting a deal together, waiting for them to discharge me out of the ER with one of the students that was privately training with me. I was helping him put together his first double-ended deal. But here's the thing. Morally, my seller put their faith in me. So I'm going to connect with them. My student had a need, and that's what I'm there for. What I'm personally going through is not relevant to that agreement. So I provided that service like I'd agreed to. And then we go back to the hotel. Kayla goes, okay, we're going to go to sleep. And I say, no, we're going to go to the restaurant. That's why we're here. So we still go to the restaurant that night. We wake up the next day. I still meet 2 sellers that I had on the schedule. I still run a 5K that next day because it was on the schedule. And I continued to try to pretend like it would affect nothing. And it worked for a really long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It worked for a really long time until I had to sit back and say, wow, I need to emotionally address it internally. And mainly I did that through physical work. I would physically work out more than ever. That's why I'm in the best shape of my life. And a lot of that, and a lot of the culmination of that book was me trying to sort through everything and starting to try to feel better about it. And but ultimately, what it leads me to believe is that, and what I've ultimately decided at the end, is that I am no longer going to only live in the future, which is primarily what I used to do. It would be, this is the goal. That's the goal. That's where I need to get. And I have to do this. These are little stepping stones to get there. But I mean, just now I've found that I don't find as much meaning in that. And I'm finding a lot more in just being personally present and actually where I am. And I think, weirdly enough, I've been able to connect with people on just a much deeper level than I ever have. Even just my kids, I connect with them way deeper than I ever did before because I'm not distracted when I'm doing the thing that I'm doing because I'm not even thinking about the future. It's just right now. And it's been refreshing.
Yeah. And I love what just your story and your journey. And so I'm really excited to read 7 Degrees. You've got just, for someone your age, just the seasons of life you've been through and the knowledge and just the real things that people need to hear. right? And you, like I've personally been mentored by you, and I've learned a lot because of your mentoring experience. I had one of the greatest months last year after your mentoring. I closed 22,000 that month. It was the most ever made in a month. I built better relationships. You taught me how to really like take a hard look at myself. So for anyone that hasn't connected with you, I think it is so important that they know who you are, and that they gain the value that they need. Because like for me, I'm living proof that like you really do pour into people, whether it's after you got shot at in an ambulance or you're taking calls at 11 o'clock at night, you know, like you're just always going above and beyond for people for the sake of people. And so I was excited to have this conversation, talk about belonging, because you have a very unique perspective on belonging that I don't get to really get from people like the way I do with you. So I want to wrap this up. So, you know, the podcast is called Built to Belong. You've spent your childhood, like we said, without a permanent place, and you've built homes, teams, legacy, infrastructure, and communities for other people. So, like in your own words, what does it mean to build something that people actually belong to? And what is the one thing that you want every single person listening here today to walk away from and do differently after this conversation?
Man, I wish that was an easier answer.
Yeah.
I never thought I was going to be the leader of any community. I'm just happy to be a part of them. I'm happy to be accepted into them. And I think the biggest difference is when you're in one. If you're in a community, whatever that is, say you're at EXP1, then you'll find that leadership and people following you will follow your input into that community. There's a big difference between being somebody that sucks something away from communities and people and being a person that pours into that community and into those people. And if you're a person that wants to be more integrated, you're a person that wants to grow into those leadership roles, maybe you want that. I didn't necessarily want it. I kind of fell into it, but that happened because I continually poured into people. So that's what I'll say about the community and the belonging. I hope to be wanted in as many communities that will have me that I could advocate for. And as far as what I think people should do differently, I would say look at one thing in your life. You know what it is. I don't need to know what it is. But you know one thing in your life that needs to change, whether it's good or bad or whatever it is, and make incremental changes consistently towards the removal of that thing or the implementation of that thing. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't try to change your entire life. You'll notice across my entire journey, I didn't make my entire life. I focused on one aspect, self-worth. Then I focused on physical prowess. Then I focused on intelligence. Then I focused on humans, connection, communication. Then I focused on sales. Then I focused on marketing. Then I focused on advertising. Then I focused on real estate as a whole. Then I focused on leadership. Then I focused on building a company. Then I focused on the building of communities and networking. And all of those compound against each other. So it's just like that. And it doesn't have to be business related. Maybe you want to stop doing a substance abuse. Maybe you want to implement something where you actually spend more time with your kids. I don't know what it is, but make that 7-degree change and you will see drastic results in even just 30 days if you do it every single day.
I love that. And that's so powerful. So for someone who wants to get connected with you, they want to learn more about 7 degrees, where can they find it?
Oh gosh. You know what? Everybody just reach out to me personally, just to my phone, to my cell phone. It's 253-737-8018. If you want to follow me on, say, Instagram, that's the Garth Ward. On Instagram, you can always shoot me a DM or anything. I'm always happy to help literally anybody.
I love that. You putting your phone number out there is pretty brave, but I'm here for it and I love it. And Garth, thank you so much for the conversation and just your contribution and for the difference that you're making, not just in this company, but in this industry. We need more people like you, and just thank you for being the leader who's creating the spaces that you didn't have and the spaces that we need to build the future of this industry.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me on today.